Hello again from Metro Manila, the Philippines, Southeastern Asia. Preparing a French lesson for a local private school to be given tomorrow morning, and I really am hoping and praying that it will go fine by God's grace. I will learn a certain pedagogical system that I will have to study, and I pray that I will then humbly react to feedback and that it will be merciful and constructive, that it will not be designed to make me feel like an inferior teacher or it will not in any way hurt me. But, okay, here I would like to summarize parts of an article on the Psychology Today website. Written by Mark Goulston or Golston, MD, FAPA. MD could stand for medical doctor or then Master of Divinity, I'm not sure. Probably medical doctor, FAPA, I don't know. Posted on March the 14th, 2016, Beyond Columbine, a conversation with Sue Klebold. Columbine, of course, refers to the Columbine High School massacre near Littleton in the greater Denver area of Colorado, therefore in western United States. And Colorado, of course, is one of those several states through which the Rocky Mountains ranges pass. And there, on April the 20th, 1999, two fourth-year high school students, 18-year-old Eric Harris and 17-year-old Dylan Klebold, who were just weeks away from graduating. They would have graduated either in May or in June, so maybe 1 to 2 months away from graduating, and had already applied for colleges or universities. And Dylan actually had been accepted into 3 colleges or universities, and he actually had even visited one of them. Anyway, they decided to end their young lives and those of 13 other people, 12 fellow students, and a teacher of that high school. Sue Klebold, Dylan's mother, is the only one of the 4 parents to have spoken out. Tragically, her marriage to Dylan's father, Tom Klebold, ended in 2014, and a large part of it had to do with the fact that Sue Klebold wanted to meet the parents of many of the victims and at their home, while Tom Klebold, who is a very introverted person, this is from a YouTube interview or YouTube combination of Sue Klebold's speech and then a question and answer session. So Tom Klebold is a very introverted man, while Sue Klebold is an extroverted woman. And eventually they built their separate lives and decided to get divorced in 2014, although they remain probably still on friendly terms. And one of the conditions for Sue Klebold's publishing her partly biographical and partly autobiographical book, Beyond, or A Mother's Reckoning, in 2016, was that she would mention neither her former husband nor her older son by name in the book. And she agreed to that. So I'm just going to read excerpts of this interview. And Mr. Goulston or Golston, however his name should be pronounced, feels a great deal of sympathy towards Sue Klebold, as do I. And I do hope and pray that Sue Klebold would, by God's grace, come to know Jesus Christ as her personal Savior, and that she would at least seek always to faithfully follow him, and that he would be able to wipe away all the anguish and guilt and remorse and grief that she still feels over her lost son. And Mr. Goulston wanted to make Miss Klebold feel completely safe, so that they could do that interview. And then there were 3 basic questions. 1, tell me about Dylan. 2, as you think of the past, say what comes to your mind when you think if only. And 3, as you think of the future and about lessening school shootings, murders, suicides, and just plain suicides, say what comes to your mind when you think what if. And then the interview took on a life of its own. So Dr. Goulston said, Sue, tell me about Dylan, and just speak freely from wherever you want to speak. And then I'm going to just roughly summarize what she said. When I think about Dylan and remembering him, of course I remember him as a young child the most. He was a precocious, darling, lovable child. And then around the age of 3, he was already fascinated with numbers and loved figuring things out. And then he was making equations on the refrigerator. 4 + 5 is 9. And he got them right. And then he loved solving puzzles. But his need to be self-reliant, I think, also contributed to his death, because I think it was just loathsome. In other words, something hateful and disgusting to him to have to think about getting help from somebody. That's because he wanted to be able to handle everything himself. We couldn't even conceive of the kind of pain that he was in, becoming emotional. And at that point, she, of course, was becoming emotional and didn't think to look for it. Dr. Goulston, Sue, say more about the self-reliance. It's almost like you felt, well, Dylan still seems self-sufficient and pretty self-contained, and so you thought he was the easy child. Sue, yes, he was. I think there were so many things about Dylan. He was shy. He was somebody that would get very uncomfortable if he was in the limelight. He was very hard on himself. If he had been in a situation, for example, where he was bullied or humiliated, I think Dylan would have felt something like that more deeply than other children who were more easygoing and more able to just let these things roll off their backs. But he was somebody who always seemed to have a pretty high standard for himself. He had a great deal of focus. His attention span was remarkable. Then Sue goes on. When he got to be an adolescent and he got out of the gifted program, junior high started, meaning junior high school, he was really excruciatingly painfully shy. I remember him being so uncomfortable. I remember once dropping him off in front of school and he didn't see me. I was trying to pick him up and I yelled out his name out the window. And as soon as he got in the car, he said, "Mom, don't ever say my name in front of everybody." That's just who he was. He took things very seriously. Some of his friends said Dylan was like a brother to me. He was bonded to his friends. Dr. Goulston, he was passionately curious and you actually admire Dylan. Sue, absolutely. Dr. Goulston, and what makes it really even more painful is that you so admired what was special about him. Sue, yes. Dr. Goulston, and you felt you could appreciate Dylan in ways that other people couldn't, And you even looked up to Dylan for those qualities. He had this deep curiosity and was driven to make sense of things. Sue, yes. Dr. Goulston. And then when he entered adolescence, it didn't make sense to him. Sue, yes, I think you are probably right about that. And then Dr. Goulston referred to Dylan's height. Actually, I think he overstated it as 6'4". I think that Dylan was actually 6 feet 3.5 inches tall, but anyway, close enough. And as a curiosity, had he been US president, he would have been the second tallest of them, at least during their presidencies, because Abraham Lincoln was just a touch taller, I think 6 feet 3¾ inches, and notably thin, only weighing about 180 pounds, while Dylan was, I think, even thinner. Yeah, this is from a website of, I think, their autopsies. While Eric was several inches shorter, only about 5 feet 8.5 inches tall. And he was in his class always, if not the tallest, probably the second tallest. And according to Sue Klebold, all the way through school, Dylan was a year younger than everybody in his class. And then, according to Sue, Dylan wanted to be invisible. And when he went to junior high school and he had been in the gifted program, he was just sort of slacking off. And they asked him, "Do you want to go to the high school for algebra?" And he was just terrified of that. He said, no, I don't want to do that. So we said, okay, well, hang out there in junior high and take geometry, take other classes. And he just didn't want to be the focus of attention. He was just very uncomfortable with that. Dr. Goulston, do you think there was a point where he almost hated being smarter than other people because it wasn't helping him to be popular? Sue, well, I think that's true. I mean, one of the things he told us when he was in junior high, when we were saying, "What's going on? You did such a great job in elementary school. Why don't you want to keep it up?" We were encouraging him to try to stay with the smart people, and he said, "It's not cool to be smart." He didn't want to be identified as someone who was different or singled out. And of course, I have seen enough of life myself. I'm now 46 years old, and having been bullied myself for several years during my education, I can say that people who stand out, whether people who are worse than the big mass in the middle in achievement levels or better than the big mass of people, some of them get bullied. Human nature being what it is. And when, unfortunately, even in elementary school, most of those students are not following Jesus Christ. And sadly, even at the so-called Christian schools, especially in the Western countries, by that I mean North America, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, there are quite many students who are not actually true believers, although there are also a significant number who are, and then there are those who would like to be, and who have this secret longing in their hearts for true faith in Jesus Christ. And Dylan apparently, while he wanted to be self-reliant and focused, didn't have one of the strongest self-esteems, but these are my thoughts. Dr. Goulston, I've worked with inner city schools, and I can see that the children who aren't smart can really take it out on the smart children. So I'm wondering if any of that was at play, because I remember in parts of your book where you said, as you looked into the culture, that there had seemed to be a lot of bullying going on. And so that the fact that he is younger and taller, that had to have been a lot to manage. Sue, right? And I can't say that there was a culture of being not smart, because it was a very high achieving school, meaning the Columbine High School. in a sort of wealthy neighborhood, and these were college-bound children. And so I think it would be almost arrogant of me to say that say there was a culture that was not smart. But I think there was certainly a culture of conservatism, and I think Dylan enjoyed being different. He started to wear a trench coat, and then there were those students who were wearing the white baseball hats, and according to the early reports after the shooting, these so-called jocks, these athletic high school students who were popular, were supposedly one of the fellow students, one group of the fellow students whom Eric and Dylan targeted for shooting. And indeed, there were a few athletic students there, like Matthew Kechter, or Kechter. And then Sue brought up that time of Dylan's teenage years when he got into trouble. And that was in 1998, in the winter of 1998, or late winter of 1998, meaning Eric and Dylan stole some electronic equipment from a parked van, which was parked on a country road in the dark. And then Eric justified it in his nihilistic and profanity-filled and mocking journal or diary by claiming that since the United States is the land of the free, then they supposedly had a right to steal that electronic equipment when some stupid person had left it in the back of his van in the middle of nowhere. Talk about a moral vacuum. And then they were arrested, and then they had to, I'm sorry, as young offenders who pretended to be sorry for what they had done, but at least in Eric's case, it was a pure show, and he actually mocked the police officers who believed him for saying that he was sorry. So they had to take these anger management courses, and their supervising police officers wrote positive reviews of them. And then another prank was that Dylan hacked with his friends into the school's locker combinations. And Dylan was doing it, according to his mother, possibly because he wanted to see if he could, because he was one of the computer geeks at the school. He was one of the students helping the teachers and helped with the computer labs. And then he left a threatening note to the boyfriend of a girl he liked. His mother called this so stupid boy stuff. And in her opinion, the school might have made a mistake by suspending Dylan. In other words, this might have contributed to Dylan's sense of not being liked, not being appreciated, not being loved. I'm paraphrasing and interpreting her thoughts. Sue says, sorry, I do remember saying to Dylan personally that I thought that was an overreaction, but I said I don't see any way we can get around it without making things worse. And so I guess you're going to have to do the suspension, and are you okay? But I think at that time in Dylan's life, he was beginning to show that he was fraying. I mean, these are the incidents. We look back and we see writings where he was talking about feeling suicidal from even the previous year. So one of the big mistakes was that none of those adults who saw the warning signs took them seriously enough until it was too late. That at least one of Eric's and Dylan's teachers had possibly notified the parents of one of them, at least of Eric, because the contents of one of Eric's compositions or essays were so disturbing. Sorry, for him or her. And I just wish that they had listened to the teacher. Apparently, Eric was able to get out of the lurch by claiming that that was only his writing, that was only fiction. But in fact, he was already suicidal and so was given. Okay, I'll continue this video in a moment. Sorry for the interruption.